Welcome back to the next part of the lesson. Now we are going to look at variables, starting with the dependent variable. What is a dependent variable? A variable whose values depend on values of another. It is always the bottom part of the table when drawing a graph on the plane, and the dependent variable is represented on the y-axis. Let's look at a question. The graph shows the total distance that John walked in October 2021. Use the graph to answer the questions that follows. Now on the x-axis we have the distance walked, and on the y-axis you can see it's for the first 12 days of October, and they numbered it: the second day, the fourth day, the sixth day, and etc. How many kilometers does the information cover on the graph? The maximum there is 40, but if we go and look at the graph itself, the kilometers on the graph that covers was 30 kilometers. On which day was the maximum distance recorded and how much was it? It was on day 10, and then again 30 kilometers. So it's day 10, and then on day 10 it was 30 kilometers. On which day was the minimum distance recorded? So if we look at the graph, yeah, it's the minimum there. So then it is day 2. Let's look at the independent variable. Now, what is an independent variable? An independent variable is a variable whose value does not depend on the value of another variable. A common error that we need to look out for is your inability to identify the difference between the dependent and the independent variables. Let's look at another question. The graph alongside indicates the cost in rands to be paid for the number of trips travelled around Gauteng province. Use the information on the graph to answer the questions that follow. So, at the bottom of the x-axis, it shows us the number of single trips. It's 10, 20, 30, etc. And then the cost in rand, 20 rand, 40 rand, 60 rand, 80 rand, and so on. Identify the dependent and the independent variable. Now, when we have a question like this, we need to ask ourselves what is changing and why. Now, remember, if we look at the single trips, if it is a train or a taxi, the taxi will ride even though you are not on it. But if you are in the taxi, you need to pay. So the number of trips is going to determine the price that you pay. So the dependent is going to be the cost per trip, and the independent is the number of single trips. What is the cost of traveling 9 single trips? So now what we can do, the closest here is the 10, and we can see the 10 is just about 79 rand, so that will be 10 will more or less be there. Going on, sorry for that very skewed line, it will be 9 trips will cost more or less 70 Rand. What did we do there? Let me just show you again quickly. That was the 10 trips, and we can see it's just there. Now we look for 9, it's more or less over there on the graph. Go to the line and read from the y-axis, and then you'll say it's more or less 70 Rand. Calculate the difference between the cost of 4 single trips and 24 single trips. So that is more or less 5. So 4 will be there. 4 trips is 20 Rand per trip. And 24, that's 25. So let's make 24 there. Ooh, all those skew lines going up. And then you'll see it's just a bit higher than 180. So the 24 trips will be over there, just above. So it's more or less 185 Rand. As you can see, this is not a clear graph. Most of the time the graph will be clearer and you will be able to see more accurately. And that brings us at the end of today's lesson. I hope you learned something. See you again soon. Goodbye.